Hi, I'm Aga. I'm compulsive eater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day out of GreySheet. I commit them to my sponsor. I don't eat in between no matter what, and God and abstinence are most important in my life today. And my abstinence date is the 7th of February 2021. And I'm glad to be here. Some of you may have already heard my story because I was sharing on another meeting. But I would like to start to say a bit where I come from. I joined GreySheet 3.5 years ago after I saw another GreySheeter who was weighing and measuring his food. It was something very inspiring, and but my first thoughts about GreySheet were that I probably joined like most of us because I had problems with controlling my weight. But very soon I discovered that the problem is much, much deeper. And I was talking with other people, and I understood that this problem is called like dysfunctional relationship with God. And it was quite a big surprise to me because I always was thinking that I'm quite close to him. It's because I was in church fellowship for many years. And I was spending a lot of time on prayers, lots of time in the church. But it meant nothing because I thought about him the same like I was thinking about my dad. So he was always somebody whom I was scared of. So anyway, that was my relationship with God in the past. And at the beginning, when I joined GreySheet, I thought that my problems with food started after I came to the UK. But when I've heard other GreySheeters stories, I realized that it began much earlier and probably very soon after I was born. I don't remember that, but I remember photos of myself, and I know I was a chubby baby, very hungry, almost 24 hours. And I also heard stories about me crying for food all the time when I was a baby. And then in turn, I was complaining about food when I was a toddler. And I also remember a story about being left without food for 3 days in a row. It happened because I complained about something and I refused eating something which I didn't like. And I was crying because I was hungry, but my parents didn't allow me to eat anything. Anyway, that lesson changed my eating pattern for good. And I've never complained about eating, about meals since then. As far as I remember, my problems with food, the biggest problems started when I was a teenager, and they became stronger. Those problems became stronger when I joined my husband in the UK. After we got married, we were living separately for over 2 years, and even if I didn't want to come to the UK, I really had to because it was dangerous for our relationship. So anyway, I remember at some point I started using food as a punishment when things went wrong, or as a reward when I was happy. And the obvious effect of overeating was gaining weight. And very soon, I simply became an addict. Gaining weight and not managing my life and not having control over my eating behavior very quickly made me like a very unhappy person. I hated myself. I was very unhealthy physically as well. And all this stuff led to suicidal attempts, and after which I always ended up at psychiatric hospitals. Once I was unconscious for a couple of days. That was my most serious attempt. And then I met this GreySheeter I mentioned about at the beginning, and I saw him weighing and measuring his food, and it was positive, like the beginning of positive changes in my life, which last until now, and I'm so grateful for that meeting today. I would like to tell you about my biggest, so far, my biggest, no matter what situation. It was a couple of weeks ago. We were replacing our old kitchen. And I don't know how that happened, but I spoken a lot with other people who had the same experience to have some like tips and good advices about what to do, how to prepare myself. And I knew everything in theory. But when this replacement started, I got very chaotic. I was like in a kind of trance. I wasn't able to prepare and think about anything what I've heard about before. The huge stress and fear I felt made me completely unable to prepare my food during that time. And the biggest difficulty was that all my stuff from the kitchen was all over the house. I couldn't find anything what I needed. But somehow I managed to prepare my abstinent food and but it cost me a lot of effort, and mostly because I felt a huge self-pity, thinking about myself, abandoning my family, neglecting them, thinking only about myself, and also the big problem was because we had some complications with water, with gas, with electricity. We were without hot water and heating for 3 days in a row, which was a disaster. And other problems as well appeared in that time, because it turned out that my son's autism like become really serious during that time, because he didn't want to eat anything. He didn't want to go to sleep because he couldn't have a shower. And that was the moment when I just had a crisis, very big crisis. And I hated my new kitchen. I hated people who came to help us, because our friends came from Poland to help us with this new kitchen. I hated my husband, my children, myself first of all. And that moment when I had this crisis, I just found some dark room, quiet room. I curled up in darkness, and I couldn't even cry. I had no tears, but I was begging God that's me. I'm done, and I can't do anything more, and I really need help just now. And I woke up next morning with peace in my heart, with bright ideas how to prepare everything. So it's really another miracle that happened in my life. And I started doing things which I've heard previously from other people, which I did many times being on GreySheet, but I simply couldn't recall them in this stress and fear when everything started. So I realized that I can just start my day early, like I usually do. I wake up at 5 o'clock, prepare my food and food for everybody in the early morning, so I could only warm it up later on. And so yes, it was nothing spectacular, just simple things which I was always doing, but I couldn't really do during that difficult time. So I felt since that moment, I felt safe and protected, and I could, move the mountains. And this was
5 left. I've got 5 minutes left.
Thank you, Nancy. So this was a good lesson to me. I learned how to be, more understanding to others and accepting everybody. My battery is low. And I became more compassionate to others. And I survived this time, and I'm still abstinent. And I had a great support from my sponsor and my fellows. And one day at a time became 1 minute at a time sometimes. And I'm sorry for that. And I started planning, protecting, and preparing everything as I was learned at the beginning when I joined GreySheet. But not everything is so nice and colorful in my recovery. I've got many struggles. One of them is outreach calls. I'm still afraid of people calling to people that I bother them, but I try to remember that I truly like talking with other people. I'm afraid of sharing on the meetings because I think that I have nothing interesting to say. But I try to remember that even my little thing can be something big for somebody who has nothing. I struggle with doing service in GreySheet because I don't believe I've got proper skills. But I try to remember that I've got experience which can be helpful to other people. And I also struggle with having my backup ready when I go out. I still don't have my special secret drawer in my work when I could store all my stuff which I need. Anyway, I try to remember that this program is about progress, not perfection, and that the aim is to get closer to God, because my abstinence is simply a gift from Him. And I remember that the moment when I was proud of myself, and sometimes even arrogant when I achieved some longer abstinence, and that it was very dangerous time for me, when apparently I was most vulnerable and exposed to this enemy, my addiction. And I do believe that it's not important how many day ones you've got, because sometimes not the aim is important, but the journey toward it. And at the beginning, I needed days, weeks, and months to practice all what I've learned from other GreySheeters. And that's why I encourage people not to think about counting days, because the most important is connection with God, surrendering my life, my victories and struggles. And I would like to end with this statement I've heard from somebody, that GreySheet doesn't take away my difficulties, but it helps to live with them. It happens through walking the steps, which for me are journey of forgiving myself and other people and God. And also GreySheet teaches me self-love, but because it's not a me program, but we program, I really want to be aware of other people and to be for other people in this fellowship, and especially those who are suffering most and who are most vulnerable. And that's why I repeat this statement once again, because it's really, thank you, Nancy, I see you, because it's really important kind of motto for me recently. When anyone anywhere realizes they have problem with food, I want them to think of the GreySheet solution. For that, I am responsible. Thank you very much for letting me share, and it's so good to be here with you.